everyone for the introduction. I'm so happy to be here. So what I'm presenting today is an editor. We have been, just before I start, I just want to give some background. We have been using the DDI for a very long time. I think it's 10 plus years now at the World Bank. We have several catalogs that are based on DDI, and we have a tool, open source tool called Nada, that's a data cataloging tool. The Metadata Editor is not a publishing tool, is it's an editor, and the need for the editor arose from we had a tool called Nestor Publisher that we used for a very long time, and as the whole DDI community knows, the development stopped, so we had to look for another solution. So the editor, Metadata Editor, is what we hope would replace the Nestor Publisher. So I'll start with the very basic intro to the editor, and then I'll do a live demo. So like I said, it's an open source web application for metadata documentation. And not only we support DDI CodeBook, we support some other metadata standards. And I'll talk about them in a second. So this is, again, heavily inspired by Nestor Publisher. So we have tried to keep the UI, the web interface, very similar to Nestor Publisher. So the key change is we use JSON schemas. Instead of using DDI as a storage engine, we use JSON schemas, and I'll show in a second what the JSON schemas look like. For the technology stack, it's a PHP web application. You can run it on any web server that supports PHP, requires a MySQL database. The front end is developed using Vue.js. And for the back end, for data processing, like for example, to import data or SPSS files, we use something called Fast API. It's a REST building tool for Python. It's not required to use the editor, but if you want to work with the data, with the microdata, you need this for data import and export. So I'll quickly go through the JSON schemas. And so JSON schemas for the editor, for all the scheme data types we have done JSON schemas. And JSON schemas are similar to XML in a sense, but they're much easier to work with. And they offer similar things that XML offers, like you can have validation. It's much easier to read for humans and machine. Almost every programming language supports JSON in one way or the other. So currently, the metadata editor that we have supports the following data types. Like we support DDI CodeBook 2.5. We have done a Geospatial schema as well. Then we have table and documents that are based on Dublin Core and some fields from MARC standard. We have done a custom schema for time series. Then we have image, which is based on a standard called IPTC, and then on a more known standard called DCMI. We have another schema for documenting videos, and one more is script. So for DDI CodeBook, this is where we mainly use the editor for. So we support only DDI CodeBook, and I think we support most of the DDI CodeBook 2.5 fields. I think there are only a few elements that we don't have in the editor, but everything else should be there. So we have support for document level, state level, data file, down to variable level metadata available in the editor. And we use this Python backend. The main purpose is to generate some statistics or do file conversion. Currently, we support Stata and SPSS, and I didn't put any version numbers here. This tool can work with various versions of Stata and SPSS, and most recent versions of SPSS and Stata both work with that. So, and then again, we don't use XML internally for the editor, but we have full support importing and exporting a DDI in an XML format. I will switch to a live demo to show what the editor looks like. And I will cover these three areas in the projects, collections, and templates. Okay, So I'm going to sign out and I'll start from the beginning. So we started with the editor as a single user desktop application. And then we realized, I mean, there was more potential to make it a multi-user application. So now it supports, you can have as many users you want for the application. Everyone can have their own login. So once you log in, what you see is your own view. The projects are not shared by default. You only see what you have created or what others have shared with you. So you can see, I mean, we have plenty of projects in this one. This is our dev instance. So you can either create a project from start, or you can import from a DDI, or if you have done a project in the editor. So I'll do an example of a DDI from scratch. So to create a new project, you can simply create a new project. We, like I said, support many different types of projects. For this time, I'll only do the microdata, which is based on the DDI CodeBook. So if I create a project, it gives you a blank project. And if you are familiar with Nesta Publisher, you would notice this looks very similar to what Nesta offered. So what you can do is it provides you a tree sidebar, and you can start filling in all the fields. There are, I think, 70 plus fields in the study and the variable section. I'm not going to fill anything. What I'll do is I can import project metadata. So I can either import from a DDI, I can import a complete DDI, or I can just do a partial import. So what I'm going to do is I'll just download it as study, and just so once I import the metadata, you can actually see what's been imported. And if you want, you can go and make changes to any section you want. So what I really wanted to show was the variable data dictionary part. So for example, the editor supports importing from for a couple of file formats. So I'm going to import just one file for this demo. I can import multiple files if I want to. You can just select all the files and you can hit import. So all of this is done using our backend API, which is Python based. PHP doesn't have anything to support that, so we have to use Python for the backend. So once I've imported a file, I can expand data files. You can look at the variables. This is the data dictionary part, which is very similar to what Nesta offered. And we have similar features there, like you can do the document, you can edit several things, like if you want to document, like for example, you want to fill in some documentation for the variable, you can do that. And there are some other additional options. For example, you can look at some statistics, you can change some options here. And all of this is generated using the Python-based backend. And you can even apply weights. For example, this is a weight variable. I can flag this as this is weight, and I can go to a field, for example, this or that, and you can see what statistics look like now. And I can go to weights, select weight variable. So when you do that, you will see it shows an icon here indicating that a weight has been applied. So the application doesn't automatically update when you apply a weight. If you look at the statistics, it's this whole column is empty. So whenever you make a change, you have to refresh the submit statistics. So if I do that, sometimes it doesn't work. There are bugs that we need to fix. But so once you do this, you can go back to statistics. You'll see it has regenerated. So, and you can do variable categories. This is all loaded from this data or SPSS files. You can change this. And once you have done all of that, you can define variable groups if you want to, or external resources. That's your documentation. I'm not going to do anything here. I'm not going to fill anything. So once you have documented your stuff, the other features the editor offers is the templates. All the fields that you see that are here, you can change the labels. You can change which fields you want to show, which fields you don't want to include in your template. These are the templates is a concept that comes from Nesta Publisher. So we have the same here, like you can switch. I mean, we have done various templates, like this is done in, like you can even do it in different languages. Like if I switch to another language, for example, French, applying that immediately changes the titles, I mean, all the labels into the language that you pick. So I'm just going to go switch back to English. Okay, so once you have done that, you will see we have a validation here that actually checks if you have filled in all the required fields and there's nothing missing. Once you have done, you can verify all of this done. You have several options. You can actually export a DDI or you can get a JSON. So I'll actually just show you quickly what the JSON would look like. So this is an equivalent of DDI JSON that based on our JSON schema. For all of our tools, we use the JSON schemas. We don't use the DDI for importing metadata anymore. And it's not because the DDI doesn't work. You can use either DDI or JSON. We have additional metadata elements in our JSON schemas that are not in the DDI codebook yet. So you can also export a DDI. You can, if you have another catalog, you can actually publish directly from the editor. So for example, I can configure connections to different catalogs that you might have. So we have a demo catalog. I'm just going to showcase how this works when you publish to a demo catalog. You can set some options. If you have external resources, you can decide whether you want to include them or not. And I'm just going to open the demo catalog here. So if I hit publish, it should be now published in our catalog. If I refresh, you can see the studies here. So you can see what it's going to look like once it's published in the catalog. So all of this is being pushed from the editor. So for the data dictionary part, you can go to the data description. You can see what was in this file. You can look at the metadata. Like you can see, I mean, there's a lot of the labels are missing here. So this is stuff that you can fix in the editor and then republish again. So it makes it easier instead of like hand coding or using an R or Python script to generate the dictionaries. You can use the web UI, which makes it much easier to update all of this. So, for example, I think this is the variable that I had updated. So you can see all of that has been published there. So going back to the, for those who don't know, this is a cataloging tool called Nada. It's an open source tool. It's available on GitHub, and it supports DDI 2.5. Okay, so this is it. I'll go back and talk a little bit about some other features. Okay, so you need to save the project. So there are some other features that are built into this editor now. For example, this is a multi-user editor. You could have one instance for your organization where all the users can just use one instance instead of everyone installing an editor on their own machine. So when you do that, like I said, you only see the projects that you have created or others have shared with you. So for sharing, we have two ways. One is where you actually create a project and you can directly share with another user, which is fine if you don't have many users. Or the other way around is you could create a project and you can have collections. So you could include one or more projects to a collection, and collections actually are nested collections. You can organize content in any way you like. And for example, this is that instance, so I mean, you can ignore the names here. But for example, for a collection, you can add sub-collections, or you can do manage access. Manage access, you can add users that you want to have access to. I don't think I have any users here in our dev instance, but you grant them permissions. Like for example, you can give them access, like if they can only view, they can edit, means they can edit any projects, edit a collection. Admin means they can completely manage a project. They, like for example, you cannot delete a project if you only have edit access. And the last thing is you have the options to export your projects directly from here. So you can create a package. A package is actually everything that you have for a project. So for example, if you want to export this and share with somebody else, like let's say they have a catalog that uses DDI, you could export a package that would include all your data, DDI, JSON, external resources, everything. And they don't need to have the editor. Our package uses an open format. It's a zip package with a DDI, JSON, and other resources included in there. And the last part that I want to really show is our templates. So the templates, the idea is like we have schemas, and the schemas have, I'm not sure everyone understand when you use the word JSON schema. So I'm just going to quickly show what is a JSON schema, and then I'll come back to the templates. So schemas is this is our documentation for JSON schemas. So for example, for microdata, if you look at the schema, we have, like for example, we have document description, state description, data files, variables. So these are all come from the DDI codebook. So we have tried to keep our structure very similar to the DDI codebook. And as you can see, this could be very nested, and DDI has a lot of fields. I mean, it's very hard to find a study that would use everything. So this is what the schema looks like. It defines, for us, the JSON schemas define the fields, has a description, have some basic validation in queries, such as whether something is required, the data type. So the JSON schema it maps to the full DDI codebook. So back to templates. So for example, if you are planning to document something using DDI, you don't want to use the full schema. And you might not like the labels that are used in the schema. You might want to change the labels, add your own help, descriptions, and examples. So with the template manager, you can create as many templates. These are core templates that cover every element from the schema. So for example, I can duplicate, and using the template manager, I can then edit information done to each field. So if I don't want to use something, let's say I'm not interested in let's say metadata produces, I can just remove. And if I want to change the labels, I can just change to whatever I want. Um, so it covers everything, all the fields. You can then change the labels instead of calling it a title statement. You can change the label here. You can add your own help descriptions. And for fields, like for example, you can do the same. You can set the label. You cannot change the type. This is a string text field, but you can flag it as a required field, recommend it, or this is another feature we are adding where you can mark some fields as private. So what happens with the private fields is that when you export your metadata, you can uh, exclude the private fields if you want to. So this is a description that is user-defined description. This is the original schema description that's in there. So you can override it with your own description. And then we have a couple of other options here. For example, there's a display. For a string text field, you might want to show a text box or a text area. So this is an example of a text box. This is a text area. So you can decide where, depending on the type of your document, how you want to present that. Then we have the option of control vocabularies. So if you want to have a drop-down list, like maybe for primary ID it doesn't work, but if you look at a field like countries, so so for example, for a country, you can do a control vocabulary. You can already pre-fill this with all the codes and labels and everything. You can even set a default value. So you can just add a value here. And this is a repeatable field with two sub-elements, name and code. So for these, we don't have much options here. But if you pick a field, like for example, primary ID, we have something called validation rules. So you can set your own rules. This is we have added only very basic ones, like you can add something like required. Regex is where you can just add any regex expression. There's min, max length, alpha num. So there are some rules that you can set. And the last part is just added for debugging purposes or just to see what your I mean, even the template use JSON in the backend. So this is what the templates do. So once you have done a template, there's one other item here is the additional fields. So one of the issues that we ran with the DDI CodeBook was like we had some fields and we couldn't find a place where to put them in a DDI. So in our JSON schemas, we have done an element called additional fields. This is a section where you can actually include metadata that is not covered by the DDI CodeBook. And this is like really a last resort option. We should always try to use something that maps to the DDI, because when you join a DDI, this metadata is not really, I mean, other systems that use DDI won't understand what is this. So, but this is there just to be feature complete. Like you might have something that you want to include and you don't want to hijack another field. Okay. So back to the projects. So you can create as many projects, and there's an option to import and export. The other option that's available for the templates is you can use them for example, you can generate a documentation for the template that you have done. So you get the field level documentation. You can see all the documentation, all the help that you have written there, and you can export this whole thing as a PDF as well. So back to the projects. For example, here I just want to show you how the control vocabularies work. So I can search for, let's say, country. So all the elements that have a control vocabulary attached to them, you'll see this icon. So you can click on that. You can go pick as many countries you want. You can do apply, and it will include them. And also we have a way, like let's say you don't have a control vocabulary, but you don't want to enter all the values. So we have an option where you can do a copy. This copies everything from the grid into your clipboard. You can paste it in Excel, make changes, and then you can come back and do a paste. With the paste, you can do replace or append, and it will replace this. It's really handy when you have a really long list here. So, and yeah, so just go back and reset this. And anything else? I think that's it for the demo. The application is, I'll switch back to my presentation for a second, and then I've included screenshots in the presentation just in case, like, if somebody wants to see what it looks like. Okay, so the application is developed. The front end is a Vue.js based application. For the back end, we have an API. Everything that you see in the application uses an API, so which makes it very easy and for people who want to use Python or R, and instead of using a web UI, use a scripting language. And here at the bank, we are mostly, using R and Python, and it really speeds up the process. And with the editor, you could start a project using the UI, the web interface, and then you can switch to a scripting language such as Python and R, or vice versa. The documentation is available, API documentation is available as Swagger, OpenAPI format. This is what it looks like. We are working on two packages. One is an R package called Metadata Editor. We just started it recently. It doesn't have all the features yet, but we are working on to include everything that's available in the editor. The other package is done using Python. We haven't published it yet, but it will offer similar features that we have in our R package. And here are some links that I have included. The editor is an open source tool. It's available on GitHub. We have just recently finished updating the UI. We are still working on some features. It's available online if somebody wants to try. And we also have a dev instance if somebody wants to try without installing the editor. You can email it to me, and I can create an account for you to try. All of our JSON schemas are published online as well, and we do have some schema guide that covers all our schemas and describes all the fields, all the elements that are in our documentation. So I'll stop here